Pregnant at 12. Did I have an abortion? Did I keep my child? Um, why didn't I use protection? Was anyone watching me? Okay, just a disclaimer, some of this information I'm going to say is not going to be safe for children and maybe a trigger warning for others. And I hope that some of this information can help somebody or maybe help someone understand a young lady that might have went through the same thing like I did. When it comes to getting pregnant at 12 years old, it wasn't that I was like a 12-year-old out there running around necessarily looking for guys or looking for opportunities to be with men. Rather, it was kind of more so a lot of opportunities would come up to be physically involved with someone because a lot of men would come on to me. I was one of those girls that had developed pretty early. I had my menstrual cycle when I was 8 years old. And so by the time I think I was maybe like 11 or so, I was already like maybe like a C cup. And I had quite the size chest, and I wasn't as big as I am now, and I was 100 pounds difference from then. But I was a lot of men thought that I was older, and sometimes when I would go to school and stuff, a lot of boys would try to talk to me. But at the time, I didn't have a whole lot of girly friends, and I was like very quiet. I was actually really into my studies and still into Barbies and all those different type of things. But when I got to junior high school, my mother had separated from my father, and we were living in a really rough neighborhood. I remember I couldn't really make any friends with any kids because there weren't a lot of kids there. They were just like kind of like strung out adults and like a really rough apartment complex that I lived in. And I remember I was really excited about going to school and making friends with different girls or anything, but none of them kind of like really warmed up to me. And I was like one of those type of social butterflies. Like I felt like I always wanted to talk to someone or really get to know any other women or any other young ladies at the time, any other kids. I remember there was another young gentleman and stuff like that. He was very friendly with me, and I thought maybe if I had a boyfriend, maybe I found out where he lived and went to his house, maybe I'd feel important. That's one thing about like young ladies, like if you have self-esteem issues or anything like that, and you don't feel important, it seems like a boyfriend will kind of like solve all your problems. Maybe that's what I thought at the time, but I didn't like plan on getting physically involved with this gentleman. I didn't plan on having sex at such a young age. Actually, I did have one friend and that would go with me to hang out over at his house. I kind of felt like I was mature and I was having like kind of like the teenage life and everything. But when I went to hang out one of the days and stuff, we did end up being physical. And I think after we had had sex, I was very embarrassed. And when I ran home, I kind of didn't know what I'd gotten myself into. I actually didn't really even know how, like, it was. I know that he had a condom and we had protection, and maybe someone else schooled him on it because he already had it and he was ready for me, but I don't think he used it right. And I also thought about the pain that I felt. It didn't feel good, of course, because I was a virgin at the time. It's not like I had experience with men or boys before. It wasn't like I had any type of involvement. And when I went back home, it was in the middle of the day. I don't think my mom even knew like who I was hanging out with or where I was. It felt like I couldn't even play with my toys. I mean, I had like a room full of like Rainbow Bright, Care Bears, all these different things. This is the 90s, mind you. I'm like telling my age right now, but this is the 90s. I don't think I felt like I could play with all my dolls and all my toys because I didn't feel like they were for me anymore. I instantly felt like this super surge of guilt over me being physically involved, and it wasn't even worth it because I mean, hey, when you're like young like that age and you're 12, you're like, okay, what did I just do? Okay, fast forwarding, within a couple months, I think right after I was involved with the young man, he didn't want to really talk to me too much afterwards. I remember I was even embarrassed because he did kind of what they do on like a movie. They go to school and they tell everyone like, oh, I slept with her or I got her in the bed or whatever, and everybody was making fun of me at school and calling me a tramp and a hoe and all these different types of things. My family ended up getting evicted from the place that we were in, and I was kind of happy to get out of that because I was like, okay, well, maybe I could put this behind me. Maybe I can be able to not have to worry about running into him again or any of the other kids that thought I was disgusting or anything like that. And like, oh, she actually did it. She's actually this and that. I bet you she stuffed her bra to get him, you know, because I have like really large chest. But when at the time, later on, I moved just to the neighboring city, then I started noticing that I missed my period, and I had had a period in a couple months. And then I had to get brave enough to tell my mom, like, okay, well, I don't have my cycle anymore. I think I do need to go to the doctor. She was extremely hurt and she wanted to kick my butt, but she wasn't quite sure if I was pregnant or not. So she didn't want to, like, you know, do anything physical to me or anything like that. And my mom was kind, but she just was, you know, she was really upset, you know. And then after we went to the doctor and we found out that I was pregnant and stuff, she actually found out first when the doctor called. She was in the other room and she said, oh, well, the doctor was like, oh, well, she's pregnant. I mean, she's going to need to OB and everything. And maybe there's a specialist that can deal with, you know, someone of her age. And she hung up, and I was hearing on the other line because, you know, no one had cell phones. So I was like listening in the other line in the kitchen, you know, while she was in the back room. And then when I was waiting for her to come in, I was like, okay, how's she going to come in? And she's going to kick my butt, or she's going to come in shouting. She didn't come in for like 30 minutes. And so I peeked out of the hallway, and I saw her just on her knees crying. You know, she was really hurt because she was like, oh, why did you tell me you were into boys? Or why didn't you tell me you were doing these type of things or anything like that? Or why didn't you talk to me about sex or anything? And I really wish I would have. And if anyone ever is thinking like, okay, when's the right time to talk to the children about sex, protection, the birds and the bees, all that, I think you should be talking to them about it often. And as soon as they even know what a private part is, you tell them like what it is and who can touch it after, is besides going to a doctor appointment. You know, you got to explain all those things like right away. I don't think I even asked my mom some of the rumors that used to go around in the 90s. Like sometimes I still remember the boy told me that, oh, if you stand up and have sex, you can't get pregnant, or if you stand up right afterwards, it'll fall out. You know, like all these crazy things were like going around in the 90s. And I was trying to make a decision on whether or not to keep my child or whether to have an abortion. I thought about it and thought about it, but I kept but my mother actually convinced me, or kind of like encouraged me. She said, you know what, if you do decide to have this little one, I'll help you. You know, I'd love to meet my grandbaby, but it's up to you. She did leave it up to me, but I ended up keeping my son, and I ended up having him at 13. Let's see. I was very moved by the fact that my mom was trying to be there for me. She did tell my parents were separated. She did tell my dad, and my dad didn't live in town with me. And, you know, he was really frustrated, like, why weren't you watching her? Or why did you like let her have a boyfriend? It wasn't that she let me or anything. She didn't have any inclination that I was even thinking about this. I didn't have a plan either. It's not like I had like a divine plan, like, oh, this is the night to hook up, or like how some people might have done like back in the 90s, like prom was going to be the night to lose their virginity or anything like that. I didn't have a plan. I did eventually find a way to get a hold of the of my son's father. We were able to find a phone number. At the time, no one had cell phones, so we had to find a friend of a friend that maybe knew someone's landline of where they lived, because they didn't live in the same place. So I went back with my mom to go. So my mom wanted to go tell his mom, like, okay, you know, she's pregnant. This is what we're gonna do about this. And I told him that I was pregnant. His mother, my son's grandmother at the time, she was mad and said, she's just trying to trap you up. She probably has like a whole bunch of other dudes that probably could be the baby's dad. And he didn't believe me at the time. He kept saying that that I was gonna try to trap him, and I just wanted money from him and stuff. I mean, he's like 15 years old, so I'm like, okay, like what money do you have? But he was, I can really hear like the rage in her head. And they didn't answer me back. They lost contact with me, and I pretty much went alone. Well, had to go it alone with my son. My son actually didn't get a chance to meet him face to face until he was about turning 7. Yeah, I think he just turned 7 when he finally met him. But as far as my giving birth, it was very hard. It's very hard when you're 13 years old and you have like a small pelvis, and a lot of the doctors were just like they kind of were very biased. Of course, they were like, a lot of doctors are very religious. A lot of people would pretty much shun me, and they wouldn't want to talk to me maybe about what I went through. They would talk really bad about me, but nobody wanted to talk to me like, okay, this is what you should do, or this is where you can find help, or this is where you can find baby supplies. They would just, kind of point the finger and murmur behind my back. I don't expect anyone to be, hurrah, you're pregnant at this age or anything, but no one was kind of interested in showing me the correct way to do things from there. A lot of my parenting I learned from my mom while she was just for that first maybe year and a half, 2 years while my son was born, because she did help me a whole lot. She helped me learn how to wake up with my son and learn how to wake up to a newborn baby. And she said, oh, I'll be there for you and I'll help you raise him. We'll do this together. Unfortunately, my mother passed away when he was about 2.5, 3 years old. And so she did help me just in those first couple of years. She actually passed away so early. I was really brokenhearted, and I thought that, okay, well, even though I don't have the guy, the baby's father's not in the picture, we can do this together. She'll teach me and everything. And I ended up having to go alone anyway. So some people will ask me like, oh, well, did you give your kid up for like adoption, or did CPS have your kid, or anything like that? Or did your mom have to raise him and he thought that maybe you were his sister? None of that happened. He was with me the whole time. And even if I wanted to have the choice, I didn't have her. Okay, right before my mother had passed away, I had stayed in a home with her, my son, and I had 2 siblings that were living with me at the time. And we had gotten evicted from our home, and I was really brokenhearted because when we got evicted, it's not evicted because we're rowdy or there was like a bunch of crazy drug trafficking going on or anything. We just broke. We were really poor, so we were always getting behind in rent, and a lot of things kept happening. And I remember I had saved up enough money to try to get this Blues Clues crib set and all these different things I got for my son. One of the days that we came home, and you get the big lock on the door and everything shoved out to the street. When I saw all my son's Blues Clues stuff, because Blues Clues was the thing and Steve was the thing, I saw that stuff on the ground and on in the trash bin in the big old dumpster. I was so heartbroken, and I had to keep finding a place to live from there. My mother went with a boyfriend, I think, that she had at the time. My siblings had to go stay with different friends, and I was just kind of trying to figure out where I was going to stay. I did ask a few different people, could I stay with them? And I tried different friends, and so this was a big, harsh period. So maybe till about like 14 years old, I was 14, 15, I was with my mom. But that period from 15 to 18 was very, very shaky. So that period of being a teen mom, I was kind of in between homes. Like, I was homeless a couple of times. There were times like where I tried to rent from people, and when you're 13 years old, you can't, or when you're like 14 or 15 years old, you can't legally get an apartment. Because some people say, why don't you just get an apartment and a job and just take care of your kid and go on it? It will go about it yourself. But I don't understand. I think they weren't really, when people say that, they don't really think about the fact that you can't rent an apartment if you're not 18. You cannot, back then you couldn't get a job unless it was like a summer job if you were 14 and up. And yeah, and there was like no way I can like put anything in my name. It's like I could go buy a car or anything, even if I had the cash. Now, this is the 90s we're talking about, and then early 2000s as like a couple of years went by. And so I didn't have any of those options. I had to always like sublet or like rent a room somewhere. And a couple times I would try to rent a couch from somebody's living room. And so I would take like my county money or food stamps, whatever I could barter with, and rent from them. And then they would get tired of me after a week, or tired of me like sleeping on their couch. And it wasn't that I was doing anything. I wasn't myself. I wasn't on drugs or anything like that crazy to where they would just be evil and kick me out after taking my money for the month. Like, oh yeah, sure, you can stay a month with me, or you can stay a month at my house. And they would just take the money and then boot me out. Or I had one friend that was really nice and let me stay with her for a couple weeks, but then I had to leave because one of the nights that I was renting the couch from her, her uncle started trying to touch me on while I was laying down, and he tried to push my son off the other end of the couch. So we're like laying like side to side on each other on the couch, and he's like yanking my legs trying to get me to like sleep with him in the middle of the night. And when I start kicking him off, and he's like, B, you gotta leave, blah 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 blah. And so I ended up having to leave from there. And that week in particular was really tough because I left unexpected and I didn't have any money like to barter with someone. Like, okay, I don't have money, but I have food stamps. This is back then when food stamps were like paper cash, so you'd have to like barter with someone to try to find a way to live, or see if they can, you give them groceries for that time being. And also too, like some of the people that I would stay with, they would eat me and my son's food, or if I took them to an appointment in the middle of the day, they would like take your food, or go through your things and stuff. Like nothing was private. It's very hard living pretty down bad when you're in between living situations. And one of the nights I remember I had, it was raining, so I had pretended to shop around in a Walmart, and I put my son in the cart and we were just like wandering. I'm pretty sure those people knew by how tattered and rough we looked that we weren't shopping, most of the night, but it was way too wet and I couldn't put my son through that because it's very hard when you're homeless. You do a lot of walking and you have to go through like a lot of different places because every place you go to, they're going to say, okay, no loitering here. Can you keep going? So you do a lot of walking because you have to keep picking up and going to the next place because you don't really know how long you can stay there, how long you could stand there. And mind you, I live in Southern California in the high desert. Some days that we were homeless, it was like either raining and cold, or it was going to be like 105 degrees. Like it was always something really challenging. This is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful to my aunt that let me stay with her for a year, because eventually a social worker did catch up to me and say like, okay, well, I know you're not, you seem like a good mom to your son, and you're a pretty good mom from what I see as like a teenager, but you can't, like live in shelters or be going in between places. So you have to find some place to stay. And so when I asked her if I could stay with her, she welcomed me with open arms, but also too, if my son were to have went in foster care, even though I'm a minor as well, she said, well, no one's going to want you two as a pair. No one's going to really want, like a teenage black girl and a baby. But a lot of people were willing to take my son, and I didn't want to separate it. There was like no way your child could have been lost in the system, and it would have been very hard to find out where he went. I've been living like with no phone or anything like that, and no money for like so long. And so it wasn't like now you could just Google and research everything, and there's like a clear paper trail of almost everything you could think of. It wasn't like that. I was very grateful for that amount of time, because once I was in a stable place and I didn't have to worry about someone trying to touch me in the night or something happening to me, I was able to make changes. After I was at my aunt's for about a year, I left from there thinking that I would be able to handle things on my own. And I ended up having another rough situation staying with another friend. And right before I was going to ask her, okay, well, maybe I can move back in, or maybe if or should I let my son go stay with her or go stay with another like foster home? Because some people were saying like, oh, you're never going to get out of this. Things are going to get better. Just give your son up. I would get comments like that all the time. My father actually bought a house nearby me, and I was able to go stay with him. And I was so grateful for that opportunity. Also, I was kind of grateful because turning 18 was around the corner. I wanted to turn 18 because I wanted to have opportunity to take care of my son. I was so frustrated with the fact that I had to always like sublet or piggyback off of someone else's situation, because legally I couldn't buy anything on my own that would give us a real a sustainable situation. Especially, well, I'm trying not to get emotional even when I'm talking about this, because when you are living on the streets, or say you're homeless or anything like that, there'll be people that might say that they want to help you, but they really don't. Like I had plenty of like men walk up to me and say like, oh, if you suck this, I'll give you money. Or if you go down on this. And sometimes women too, they would be like, oh, okay, if you become my plaything and live with me, then I'll help you and your son out. Like there was always somebody like being disgusting or saying like, oh, why don't you just try this drug and party with me and I'll give you some money afterwards, so that way they can knock you out and maybe try to like sleep with you, or do whatever debauch thing that they're gonna do. I'm so glad that I did none of those things. It's very hard for people to believe, because usually people, I even had to, when I had a social worker for a while, they made me drug test because they assumed that every teen mom, just because you're a teen mom, you had to possibly be on drugs. So I had a drug test for like a few years and submit these things so that way they wouldn't have reasons to take away your child. So my son was never taken from me. That's one thing I want to make a good point of. He was always with me, but I couldn't provide for him the way I wanted to. And some people were like, oh, well, like you should have done this and you should have done that. And I don't think they realize, talking about it now in 2022 or in 2021 or like even years ago, those resources weren't available to me now. Like now, Teen Mom's all over MTV and it's everywhere, and everybody can kind of like listen to the stories. I mean, people of course knew about teen parents, but there weren't like thousands of programs and like ways you can have your own money and help yourself. And it was very hard for me to even get WIC. Like they would make you have a payee for WIC, and then somebody would run off with all your baby's milk. Like there would be crazy things like that that would happen to me all the time. So how are things going now? Things are doing really, really well now. Like I'm so proud of myself for even keeping my son, and also how he has grown. At this time, I mean, this is years later, my son is going to be 24, and I'm actually a grandmother. I have two sons. Actually, I have a 14 and a 24-year-old, well, turning 24-year-old, but also have a grandson, and he is just so sweet, and I just love him so much. And my oldest son, well, the one that I had as a teen, I'm proud of him. He wasn't a teen parent or anything. My grandson's just a baby still, and he does ask me questions about our situation, but he doesn't remember it. Like when I talk to him about it all the time, he's always like, I remember just a little bit of walking and living with an aunt here and there for a while, but he doesn't remember like standing in the rain or people like stealing like paper food stamps. Remember, they were like paper, not a card, like EBT card or anything like that. He doesn't remember people stealing them out of my socks, or running after us or anything like that. And I'm so glad he doesn't. Like sometimes I think about how much I prayed. Like I believe in God just because he delivered me through all this. It's just, I didn't have the belief that I have now. Like when I think about it, I'm like, okay, I had prayed all the time. I was like, okay, God, whatever it is that these other moms have, please make me have it. Make my mind over. Like, please make it to where I will know what to do. I'll know how to take care of them, because I'm turning 18 years old soon. Can I please just show me the way and make me know the way? There wasn't like Google then. I couldn't just look up, like a blog that just said like 10 tips to when you have a newborn or anything like that. I had to figure it out as I went, and it was very heartbreaking to know that I wasn't gonna have like my mom to go back to, because she already had passed away by a couple years at that time. And when I think about it, I wish that she knew now how well things are going. Oh my gosh. Like if she saw how well my oldest son is doing, and how well like I took care of him, and how there's a happy ending out of it, I would have really loved for her to see that, because at the time she in her mind didn't know how things were going. She had a brain aneurysm, and so she died suddenly. So she probably was feeling at the time like she was leaving me behind and leaving me without help. But you know, um, I am married. When I was 18 years old, I actually had met my husband. I had just kind of got myself stable, and I was just starting to graduate from high school. I ended up graduating from high school late because I had to do independent study, and I kept getting in and out of school during the time. But I was able to graduate by 18 and on honor roll, and I was very proud of myself for finding work and working. And so he kind of met me. Well, I met him years ago when I was a child, but I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he didn't know all these things that happened to me. He was actually my brother's friend. And so later on, when we met up again, I was doing much better. And so it was kind of interesting and shocking to him, because I did have to explain to him all the kind of life that I went through, and I have a son and this and that, and he didn't seem fazed by any of that. He was very kind, and my son warmed up to him right away, and he's currently my husband now, and he treats both our boys so well. Throughout being a young mom, I've had many people help me along the way. Some people ridiculed me, some family members ridiculed me, but then there were some that were so loving and really helped me develop and change and become the woman that I am now. And I also have a sibling that I was extremely close to. My brother, he passed away in 2021, but he was very helpful and he loved my kids as his own, and he helped me a lot as well. And I think about how far I've come and how much other people have helped me. I mean, I still feel like a winner. I still feel like there's much more life to live. And I hope that anybody else that's gone through something like this, or even that's going through like a bad situation, like a chronic illness, or maybe they're going through some really heavy financial problems, or maybe they just came into the States and they have nothing at the time. I hope that they get past it, and they get past it fast. I hope that their suffering is diminished, and I pray that it is, because it was very hard for me. And I remember those years, because that span of years from that 13-year-old having a baby all the way up until the 18-year-old, it wasn't like things magically changed when I turned 18, but oh my gosh, a world of things did change. I mean, my son, I was just so much happier. I still remember when I got my first car when I was 18, and me and my son weren't wandering on the bus anymore, just putting him in the backseat with air conditioner. I mean, I had just a little janky Mazda Protege, and I remember loading it up, and as long as the air conditioner worked, I was taking him everywhere. And I was so proud of that little car. I'm proud of just having the basics in life, and that's pretty much what I'm about. And that's why my channel, I called it Mom Improved, because I have changed so much, and I really want everyone to improve wherever you're starting at, whatever your situation is. Even if you have a good situation and you still want to grow from there, it's all a blessing. And that's all I really want for you, for me, and anyone else. And thanks for listening, and share this with anybody else that is either a teen mom now or anyone else that's interested. Take care.